not too long ago, I had it out with a feminist who had come into a male safe space from a feminist blog, just to scoff at the idea of male disposability. She went there and basically said that the entire concept was a myth, that men's lived experiences were completely wrong, and that they were just a bunch of whiners who were complaining over nothing. Uh, yeah. Anyhow, that got me thinking about the concept of male disposability and how that interacts with the feminist movement. Male disposability has been around since the dawn of time. And it's based on one very, very straightforward dynamic. When it comes to the well-being of others, they come first, men come last. This is just the way it has always been. Seats in lifeboats, being rescued from burning buildings, who gets to eat. Really, society places men dead last every time, and society expects men to place themselves dead last every time.
Hey guys, welcome back to That Liminal Period. It's your girl, Chun-Li Shoddy, and today I'm going to be reacting to a video by the content creator Karen Straughan. It's going to relate to feminism and the disposable male. I haven't really heard this concept, but I think I know where it's headed to just based on her first definition. Let's jump right into it and see what Karen has to say. And the irony, I actually have a feeling that she is going to be speaking up for men, and her name is Karen. This is created 12 years ago, way before the name Karen had a negative connotation. But anyways, let's get back into it.
I've always had a dynamic of women and children first, and that has not changed at all. The 93% workplace death gap has to be evidence of this, if only because there's nobody with any kind of importance or power who's interested in changing it at all. In fact, I remember reading an article in a BC paper not long ago that described the increasing proportion of female injuries on the job as a huge problem. And the insane thing was, the change reflected a decrease in male injuries rather than an increase in female ones. Men's injuries on the job had gone down because the economic downturn had put so many men out of work in the resource sector that there just weren't as many trees or pieces of heavy equipment falling on men as there had been before. And yet, this was framed as a huge problem for women that required immediate action to solve.
So pause. Something that Karen just mentioned right there is interpret data and analysis sometimes can be misleading. There are less men in the numbers, less men in the population pool that we are drawing these statistics from, but at the same time, they're improving as far as their safety measures. So you're seeing increased safety measures, which is going to be an increase for all. However, the pool of data has now shifted so that you have more women represented proportionately. So these women aren't actually getting more injured. It's just there are less men represented. So think about it like this. If you had 10 employees at a construction work site, and let's say 7 of those employees are men, 3 are women. But during the economic downturn and the company's laying go of people, they wanted to hold on to the DEI and affirmative action hires, right? It's a construction site, so we're holding on to the women. Okay, so we had 10 employees, we let go of 2, and those 2 employees happen to be men. So in the first scenario, we had 30% women represented in the 10 employees. But now it seems like there's 37.5% women. So let's say 40% women represented in this cohort. So that number increased. The injury didn't increase. Their representation did. So that's how the data statistics was misinterpreted to create a certain narrative that women are in danger. Women are getting more injured, and so we need to fix it. We didn't give 2 craps when it was men that was dying at the workplace. No, we weren't concerned about increasing their safety precaution and safety measures. But now it's an issue. It's the same case whenever we think about divorce court. Before, women were more financially dependent on men. Because during divorce cases, women do think that they're more entitled to the man's earnings. But now, when you have celebrities like Kelly Clarkson, you have Adele, Mary J. Blige, now that they're the breadwinners, they're the one making all of the money. During the divorce settlement, they're the one that are losing out on their assets. Now we have an issue. So now we need to go back to the drawing board and see what is fair in the divorce court. But anyways, let me get back to Karen before I go off on a tangent.
It's just crazy. It's like if men aren't dying at work at 20 times the rate women are, we must be doing something wrong as a society. Back when we were still living in caves, that attitude was necessary for human survival. Nature's a really harsh mistress, especially when you think of all the animals that never ever get to die of old age. Things were a lot different for humans through most of our history on this planet than they are now. Life was dangerous, human settlements were small, isolated from each other, and one big disaster that took out a lot of women pretty much meant the end of the entire shebang for that group of people. So really, the level of importance that a human settlement placed on the well-being of women and children reflected almost always how successful that settlement was. And that can be expanded to encompass entire societies. I keep hearing from the feminist camp that femaleness is always really...
So essentially, through evolution, we have been taught that we need to protect women and children because that's how communities are built. You can have 100 men, but they're not going to be able to create that next generation. They're not going to be able to continue their lineage with just 100 men. But you can have one man and 99 women, and you can build a society. So that is why tribes, villages, cavemen, when they were trying to extend the existence of their species, they would have to protect the women. That's why men are the first to die when we run out of resources on a deserted island. That's why men, well, no, if you have a whole bunch of men all together on a deserted island, they'll be able to get off. If you have a whole bunch of women, they won't be able to survive. But what I mean is, if you had an equal mix of men and women on the island, they're going to make sure that the women and children are fed, that the women and children are protected against the natural disasters.
Undervalued by society, and that maleness is preferred. But I've always contended that it's the exact opposite. The feminine is intrinsically and individually valuable, simply because females are the limiting factor in reproduction of any species. When it comes to producing babies, every woman counts, whereas biologically...
Again, this is 12 years ago, so update 2024, not every woman can reproduce. There's a lot of Dylan Mulvaney's out there that will tell you they're able to reproduce, but that is just a biological reality that trans women are not going to be able to have children. But they are expecting the same type of protection and cover from men and the same type of treatment, which is crazy because there is a reason why they were prioritizing the safety of natural born women. But again, going back to what Karen is saying is that women have inherent value. We're able to carry babies. We are the vessel. So we have the most inherent value when we are of age and during the biological clock. Women that are in their 50s and 60s who no longer are able to carry a baby or to have their own children may not have the same intrinsic value in a man's perspective, at least not in the dating market or someone that's marriage minded. That's why they say you can hit the wall. But for most men, you have to create your value. You have to show your value. Like women can just exist and you have value. Men have to work hard and build that value, whether it is through accumulating resources or being able to outcompete other men. Men have to work hard. And that's just the sad reality.
One very happy man could probably do the work of hundreds in that regard. So the level of instinctive importance we humans place on the safety and provision of women and their children, it's one of the main reasons why we've been able to be so successful that we've come to really dominate this planet. And while I will concede that this drive to keep women safe from all harm has often resulted in extreme limits being placed on women's mobility, their agency, their power of decision to direct their own lives, all through history in many cultures, and in many cultures even today. I think it's telling that those cultures tend to be the most backward. When you consider the restrictions placed on women in places like Afghanistan, and then you consider that if we bombed them into the Stone Age, it would be progress, I think you can conclude that the most successful societies had a really, really good balance between allowing women freedom and the ability to choose and direct their own paths in life, and the need to protect them and provide for them. However, feminists will insist that this these kinds of restrictions being placed on women in those kinds of societies are the ultimate form of objectification. You lock up your possessions to make sure that they will
They
never
see
be
it
lost
as
or
slavery.
stolen or harmed. Uh, Honestly, if I were a guy on a battlefield, I might appreciate being objectified in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I was going to be an object, I'd rather be a sexual one or somebody's prized possession than an object that can simply be thrown in the trash or
Discarded.
smashed into pieces in the service of somebody else's purpose. Feminists also have a very simplistic idea that our
What Karen is saying is spot on. Women are very open to being objectified when they have monetary gains. They don't mind being sexual objects, such as the Playboy bunnies for Hugh Hefner, because they are getting all of the resources. They don't mind. And with the rise in OF girls, you really can see that they are simply okay and have very little self worth because they're allowing themselves to be objectified. We are completely okay with being objectified when it comes to being drafted into potential wars. Yeah, call me a woman then. You want to be objectified and prioritize if the ship is sinking. But men are disposable, or we treat them as they are disposable. Young men of today are living in a harsher time, a more scary time with more polarizing conversations that are only further and further driving us apart. So yeah, I think it's a struggle for men to see their worth in this world, in the modern world, when you're constantly tearing them down and telling them that they can be replaced. They're just a source of finance. They're just a protector, provider, but you're not a person that we value. Women can pretend and say that they want to be treated as equal as men, but when the shit hits the fan, they'll always lean on that femininity.
willingness to absolve women of their crimes, slap them on the wrist, spare them punishment, it comes from a deep disrespect society has for women's personhood. Not seeing them as full human beings, capable of looking after themselves, that we see them as children who don't know any better. And yeah, well, there are parallels there in our desire to protect both women and children from not only their own poor decisions, but the full consequences of their shitty behavior. It's really not as simple as they try to make it out to be. I mean, seriously, even today in 2011, we fully expect that if it comes down to a man and a woman in a burning building and you can only save
See?
one, the expectation is that you choose the woman every single time.
Children and babies
So
and
honestly,
old people.
whose humanity are we placing above whose here? We're not talking about going to work. We're not talking about getting an education. We're not talking about having the freedom to decide what you want to be in life. And we're not talking about getting to take taekwondo. We're talking seats in lifeboats here. The person in the lifeboat is going to survive no matter how capable or incapable they are of managing their own life. And the person going down with the ship is going to die no matter how independent, self-sufficient, and awesome he is. That's
So once again, we're not judging it based on merit. Women get to survive simply, purely because they are women. That's it. I'm really interested in seeing how this next generation is going to decide who dies and who gets to go in the lifeboat with all of this conflation of gender and sex and identity. Does Dylan Mulvaney get to go on the lifeboat, or is Dylan Mulvaney sinking with the rest of the men? I'm not saying we should put it to a test, but I'm just curious. Where do you guys think Dylan Mulvaney is going to place? Does it get a seat?
Equation. One life more valuable than another, and the woman wins every time. So honestly, is there any argument anywhere that women's humanity has always been held in higher regard by society than men's? To be important to society, a woman merely has to be. A man has to do in order for his life to have any meaning to anyone other than himself.
Yep.
I think it was Man Woman Myth who said our society reduces men from human beings to human doings. And I really think that's an apt analogy. We measure a man's worthiness to wear the title of man, and therefore the title of human, through how useful he is, either to society or to women. And one of the most useful things a man can do, even now in the eyes of society, is to put women and children before himself. And while I think there's plenty of argument that this attitude is at least partly innate, the way most survival traits are, even collective ones, if it starts in the chromosomes, we really do everything that we can as a society to reinforce this dynamic. Studies have shown that even though baby boys tend to cry and fuss more than baby girls, parents are quicker to attend to or console a baby girl than they are a baby boy. Um, Even just the level of acceptance of infant male circumcision in our culture, when female genital mutilation was banned pretty much the first afternoon we all heard it existed, it really says a lot about the differing expectations we have for males and females. I mean, speaking as a mother, the last thing I would have ever wanted was to hear my child cry, especially when they're at an age when they're completely helpless, completely at the mercy of outside forces, and utterly dependent on the adults in their lives for every last thing. And yet, even knowing how painful that cut is, we expect baby boys, only days old for fuck's sake, to just suck that up. And just think about what even these very first interactions and experiences, these differences in how we nurture our babies, depending on what gender they are, what this teaches them. What do we teach baby girls when we attend to their crying so quickly? We teach them to ask for help because...
See, this is nurture versus nature argument, right? There is an element of environmental biology and evolutionary biology that we tend to protect women and children, right? Like we said earlier, they're the ones that are the vessels to that next generation. However, there's also a nurturing aspect on how society molds young men to be. They are raised to not expect help because they haven't gotten it since they were babies. Women have always been raised to have something else to depend on, whether it is their parents, whether it is a man, or whether it is government baby daddy. Men are taught that they need to survive and they need to find value, build value in order to have a purpose. So not only intrinsically do women feel this, but now we're also raising them to believe this. Again, that's where the boss babe mentality, feminism did this. Okay? They have instilled in us so much that we are valuable, that we're all born queens, that we have inherent value forever and always, and you cannot lose value, even though you're not seeing that in the real world. You see that this is the expectation that we've created.
Their needs are important. We teach them to let us know when they're afraid or in pain because it's important for us to know when they're sick or in danger or hurt, so we can do something about it. We teach them that when they're sad or lonely, to summon comfort, and comfort will be there. We teach them that they're important. Their needs and well-being, both emotional and physical, are important just because. And what are we teaching baby boys when we leave them to cry? We teach them there's not much point in seeking help because it will be grudgingly given, if at all.
Mm.
We teach them that they should become self-contained in their ability to deal with emotions like fear, helplessness, loneliness, sadness, pain, distress. We teach them stoicism. We teach them to suck it up. We teach them that their fear and their pain are things that are best ignored. We teach them that their emotional and physical well-being are just not as important as other things. I mean, given all of that, is it any wonder it's like pulling teeth to get a man to go to the doctor when he's sick? What we're teaching that baby boy is all the things a man needs to know and feel and believe about himself if he's going to stand in front of a cabin with a rifle while his wife and kids hide inside. We're preparing him for the day he has to fix a bayonet to a rifle and charge a hill under enemy fire. And we're preparing him to make a decision to resign himself to an icy fate while women and children escape in the lifeboats. We
This
are
shit
really
sounds so
teaching
real
him
right
to
now.
internalize his own disposability. And baby
Oh,
girls,
goodness.
by attending to her crying so quickly, by letting her know she's inherently important to us, we're preparing her for the day she has to think of her own safety first, even if it means the man she loves is left standing alone with a rifle in front of a cabin. We're preparing her to take that seat in the lifeboat. We're training her to not allow guilt or empathy or acknowledgement of a man's humanity or any sense that he might just maybe deserve it more to convince her to give her seat to him. Because for millennia, the human species absolutely depended on her feeling 100% entitled to that seat. And that brings me to feminism. You know, the patriarchy smashers, those righteous avengers of equality, dogged dismantlers of every single gender role. What exactly is feminism doing to dismantle this traditional role of the disposable male? Feminism's greatest victories have only reinforced in everyone that society still owes women provision, protection, help, and support just because they're women. In its collective dismissal and abandonment of male victims of domestic violence, it only reinforces in men that it's pointless for them to ask for help because men's needs are of no relevance, and their fear and pain don't mean anything to anyone.
Straight up, women, especially feminists or modern day feminists, really do gaslight men into believing that their cries for help, that the statistics of their suicidal rates, of them not going to college, that is just all because of their own doing. It's just purely because women are smarter. It's just because purely that men are unambitious, unmotivated. You're an incel. You know, it's so sad. But to hear her put it so eloquently and just the connection points, like that is spot on. And I'm appreciating the fact that I came across this video.
Feminism teaches us to put women's needs at the forefront of every single issue, political or social, whether that issue is domestic violence law, sexual assault law, institutional sexism, social
Divorce.
safety net, education funding, homeless shelters, government funding for shovel-ready jobs that didn't stay shovel-ready once feminists got wind of them. Everywhere you look, everywhere you look, there are feminists pushing their way to the front of the line, demanding women's fair share of all of the goodies, the good stuff, the loot, the booty, the cookies. Even if women don't need it, even if women don't deserve it, and even if somebody else needs it and deserves it more. And they get it because we give it to them. Feminism has done nothing but exploit this dynamic of the expectation on men to put everybody else before themselves, especially women. Women's safety and support, women's well-being, and women's emotional needs always come first. This is the most stunning piece of society-wide manipulative psychology I think I have ever come across. Feminism has been on the down low with old school chivalry right from the start, and they might seem like strange bedfellows for sure. But they're not, because both concepts are built on a firm foundation of female self-interest. We made our way as humans through a really harsh history, and we became the dominant force on this planet. And one of the reasons we were so successful is because we have consistently put women's basic needs first, their need for safety, support, and provision. It was in humanity's best interest for women to be essentially self-interested and for men to be essentially self-sacrificing. But we don't need that dynamic anymore. I mean, our species is in no danger of extinction. I mean, we're 7 billion people clogging up the works here.
If anything, we're at risk for extinction because of feminism, because of the progressive ideologies. You know, women's sexual liberation, access to birth control, women just simply not wanting to have children anymore, just based on selfish motives. Like she said, it's based on self interest. The reason why women aren't settling is because they're too busy taking flights. They're too busy opening it up for every man and neighbor. They're too busy monetizing and objectifying themselves on OF. They don't want to settle down. They don't want to stop the shopping sprees or girls' night out. Women's self interest is going to lead to the destruction of the Western world. You heard it here first. Actually, you probably haven't because I don't know. Maybe I'm just super negative, but I'm sure you've heard of that.
What's the worst that could happen if we all just collectively decided that men were no more disposable than women and women were no more valuable than men?
That'll never happen.
In fact, the greatest danger I see to us right now is that in our desperation to bend over and give women everything they want and everything that they say they need, we've unbalanced society to the point where we're just in danger of seriously toppling over.
Yeah.
And really, the only difference I see between the traditional role and the new one for men with respect to disposability is that maleness, manhood, it used to be celebrated, it used to be admired, and it used to be
And
rewarded.
now it's toxic.
Because it was really fucking necessary. And because the personal cost of it to individual men was so incredibly high. But now we still expect men to put women first, and we still expect society to put women first, and we still expect men to not complain about coming in dead last every damn time. But men don't even get our admiration anymore. All they get in return is to hear about what assholes they are. Mm-hmm. Is it any wonder they're starting to get pissed off? Anyhow, that's not all I have to say about this subject. But it is all I have to say about it today, since my kid is about to walk in the door home from school. So I am going...
Okay. So I'm going to stop the video there. It's wrapping up essentially, and I appreciate her messaging so much. Just the way that she was able to concisely communicate her thoughts and just give such a balanced perspective. I don't know. I've been told by some females and some men that I simp too hard for those guys. But I understand some of the struggles. Like, I have a little brother. He was raised by a house full of women. We didn't have my father in the house growing up. So to see him get torn down day by day, told that he is devalued or invaluable or valueless, being told day by day that he has no meaning, has no purpose, and that the future is women, that every woman out there is looking down on him because he's 23 and is not a six-figure man. Not only are men being put last in the workplace, they're being put last at home, they're being put last in their love life, their personal life. They're just in dead last. And I feel bad for them. So happy I was able to come across this video. I hope I was able to add some additional insights, or at least my opinion. Thank you guys so much for watching at Liminal Period. I'm your girl, Chun-Li Shoddy. Please let me know, what are your takes on feminism and how disposable men are in 2024? 13 years later, and I'm sorry to say, Karen, it's not getting any better. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.